This is Cyclops Redistribution, a graphic novel from Marvel Comics, and unless I am mistaken, this was also the very first time that Cyclops from the Excellent Men had starred in a solo story like this. Although, as you can see from the cover, Squealy is also in it. So poor Cyclops, he ends up having his solo story buffed up with loads of other Excellent Men characters. And it turns out that this story is actually far more important to Squealy's history than it is to Cyclops. This is a story where after 10 years, Squealy regains his powers after he was retired and quickly dropped from the book by Christopher Clairvoyant. This is written by Bob Patrick Harras and the pencils are by Ron Lee. That is Stanley Lee's little brother, and he is really brilliant. This video is going to mostly be about him and how he is, like, in my opinion, Ron Lee is like the artist of the 1990s. He was like a 90s Jorge Perez or a 90s Jason Bourne, but then the 90s became all about superstar artists, and Ron Lee was often overlooked. He was a workhorse. Ron Lee, he was always doing multiple books at once. In 1991, for example, he was the regular artist on both Silver Surfman and Captain America, as well as doing the art for the final 3 issues of Affinity Gauntlets. The same is true in 1993. He was on Silver Surfman, Spider-Man Limitless, Excellent Men 2019, and he was doing the art for the Affinity Cluedo crossover. He was always doing fill-in art and other projects. And this Cyclops story here, this was just before he landed on Captain America. I think at this point he was just on Silver Surfman, and then he did this, and he wound up taking out the art for Captain America. The story here is that Cyclops, he has gone to Scotland and he meets up with Bo and Myra MacDonald and Squealy, and there is some weird stuff going on in Scotland, like they eat battered Mars bars up there. What's all that about? Myra MacDonald is acting strange, which is at least different to acting boring. What this really is a competent story with art that makes it feel a lot more impressive than it is. The story is fine, but it is the art that really brings the quality. It's quite a slow start, and as such, you probably haven't seen any really impressive art yet. But Cyclops and Squealy, they discuss how Bo and Myra has been acting strange, and how there is weird stuff going on in Scotland. I cannot remember if I specified when I mentioned it before, but Squealy, he doesn't have his powers. I am sure I have done a video moaning about how Christopher Clairvoyant clearly didn't like the character, and he was only on the Excellent Men because David Cockburn did. There is also a muty disease going around. It is very lethal and it has infected some children in Scotland. And the disease is called the redistribution disease. It is very, very similar to the disease that they introduce in a few years' time, the muty AIDS. The one that starts spreading after the Executioner's Agenda story. But if you are getting all excited thinking that when you write the Excellent Men, you can come along and do a retcon where you reveal that this redistribution disease was actually the first wave of the muty AIDS, keep dreaming, because by the end of this story, Cyclops single-handedly cures AIDS forever. What's happened is Myra MacDonald, she is being controlled. She is being hypnotically controlled by Nimrod's cousin, Master Mold. And this is where the art takes the lead. We just have great splash pages of Nimrod's cousin, and come on, this stuff is great. Master Mold, he is responsible for this disease. He used Myra MacDonald to develop it and give it to young children. And now, to make things worse, Squealy has also caught it. So now it is up to Cyclops to save the day by fighting these weird little creatures who, despite their appearance, they are not at all related to Hans Moleman's subterranean moloids. But yeah, look, this is great art. We have like an army of them, and they're all drawn and have different faces. They have kidnapped the infected muties, Squealy and the little girl. Then we meet Nimrod's other cousin. This is like his cousin twice removed. This is like the one who isn't invited to the family reunions. He is called Conscience, which is a stupid name, and he doesn't appear again until 2010 in Coming Second. There he is again with those things that are not moloids. They are like his servants. The idea with Conscience is that he is a hybrid between Centennial and Human, which is an idea that they will redo more than once after this story. I don't even know if you could call this the first time that they really used that idea either, because they already did all that rubbish with Nimrod having a secret identity who lives with a Hispanic family. So what we have here is a Cyclops story with some great art. Bob Patrick Harras, he is not the greatest of writers, but I think as a writer, he always gets an unfair amount of flack. His main contribution to comics as a writer was a run on the Avengers, which divides a lot of people. Some people love it and are all about it. Other people say it is when and why they dropped the book. And then there are people like Kurt Busey who probably didn't read much of it, but decided to hate it and retcon it because it falls outside of their own personal nostalgia for comics. But this is fine. There is Conscience again. He gets a complete redesign when he reappears in like the last two parts of Coming Second. The Human, that is part of Conscience, it is that guy from that ad Christopher Clairvoyant and David Cockburn story. The one who created a bunch of robo-excellent men. Also before, when I said that he only appeared once after this, can you erase that from public record? Because I remembered he actually appears in Borg Covenant as well. I definitely need to start looking at Borg Covenant. That story is like my favourite of the 90s Excellent Men crossovers. I don't know how much of that is because Emma Frosty's is one of the main characters in it though. I'm merely still turning all the pages of this because I want to get to the bit where Squealy shows up with his powers back again. And we just keep getting really amazing Ron Lee artwork. You might think that this one is a bit questionable, but the point of this is to establish the size of Master Mold. And also what is either a fucking massive door frame or a deliberate perspective thing where, I'll be honest, it is not entirely clear it is meant to be a normal sized door that is closer to us than Master Mold is. But Nimrod's cousins, they have had Boar and Myra develop this deadly virus to kill off all the muties, and it falls to Cyclops and Boar and Myra and that terrible cunt with an eye patch to fight against Master Mold and stop him from releasing it. Then we have a fight between Master Mold and Conscience, the human part of Conscience. It is at odds with Master Mold's entirely centennial processing unit. And then there is a good 2 pages of Cyclops fighting Master Mold. I look at this as an art book first, but the story accompanying it isn't bad. There was an Excellent Force comic I was going to review ages ago, but I never got around to it. That was 100% just an art book. There was like the flimsiest of stories that was just built around getting the artist to do these big pieces. And the art for that was good, but there really was nothing to it besides it being a vehicle for the artist. This isn't like that at all. With a different artist, this would still be a story. It probably wouldn't be as good, but thankfully we have this version of it with Ron Lee doing some really good stuff. I love all the art with Master Mold, or the Centennials, or Cyclops firing his eye lasers. Fuck it, let's just get a Squealy. It feels shitty skipping all this art. I mean, look, this is great art. Ron Lee, he never got the serious respect he deserved. He really should be up there with Jorge Perez and Jason Byrne and Simon Walterson and whoever. He is brilliant. I'm skipping out of this really well-drawn fight with Master Mold just to get to Squealy coming in, doing one of his squeals. What happened was the virus, when Squealy's body was fighting it, it basically wound up giving him his mutie powers back. I'm fine with that. I like Squealy. He is a good character. If you see this for cheap, I recommend you get it. You have got some lovely artwork and a story that isn't bad. I do think the story could be improved, especially the start, which is very, very slow, and it doesn't quite nail the atmosphere of things being weird and creepy. And once we get to Nimrod's cousins, we do have some nice spectacle, but the story does seem to wind down a lot, and it is just Cyclops and other characters standing around, listening to Centennials prattling on. Give it a read if you want. I read it and I didn't regret it. I think that means I have to rate this one a 7 thumbs up.